Hello, everyone. This is Jonathan Little, and I'm here today with the 63rd episode of Weekly Poker Hand. Today, we're going to be going through a hand from a tournament that I recently played in Europe. But first, I wanted to talk to you about one of my new projects that came out recently. It is called Jonathan Little on Live No Limit Cash Games. For those who have already read my book, Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker Volume 3, where I essentially go through 150 tournament hands in a quiz format for you to study. This book is very similar, except for it is for cash games. And in this book, I do go through 105 high-stakes cash game hands that I played at Commerce Casino. So the action was definitely furious for those who know anything about the LA cash games. And if you are thinking about playing live poker cash games, I strongly suggest you check it out. The action was fairly wild, as it always is in Commerce, and it provided for a ton of great content. So check it out. You can get details of that at jonathanlittlepoker.com/cash, then the number 2. So jonathanlittlepoker.com/CASH2. So check that out. I think you will thoroughly enjoy it, especially if you've made it to the 63rd episode of this podcast where we go through poker hands. That is probably one of the books you will enjoy the most. So in this hand, we are playing 250, 500, and I'm in the big blind with the glorious King 2 offsuit, King of Clubs, 2 of Hearts. I have 44,000 chips, which is fairly deep, but everyone else has that many chips. A guy under the gun raises to 1,000, and then a loose, aggressive European kid calls on the button. There are antes in play. So I have to call 500 more to try to win just a little bit. And whenever that's the case, I'm okay seeing a flop with King 2 offsuit. For those watching the video at jonathanlittlepoker.com or at YouTube, looks like I typed in the pot incorrectly pre-flop, so please ignore that. I put 500 for the antes instead of 50 for the antes because I am not the most proficient at the share my pair replayer. I'm pretty good at it, but sometimes I do make an error. So anyway, King 2 offsuit, I will go ahead and call this. We have to put in 500 to win roughly 2,200, give or take. And as long as you play really well after the flop and know what you expect your opponents to do, I think you can profitably call this, but folding is also fine. And if you thought the initial raiser would be very loose, I think 3-betting this actually becomes a pretty good play. So, flop comes ace, king, 6. I have middle pair. 2 spades on the flop, ace and king of spades. I'm definitely going to check this. I would probably check fold versus an under the gun better. But he checks. And then the button, who I have tagged as a loose, aggressive European kid, which says quite a bit, that's 1625. So again, the pot size listed on the video is incorrect. Pot is probably 3,700 or so. So he's betting roughly a little bit less than half pot. And I think I could go either way between calling or folding. If I thought my opponent was betting 100% of his range, then I think I should definitely call. And also, my opponent may not even bet a hand like King Jack or King Queen, or maybe even something like Ace 2, because he may think that he's not going to get a ton of action unless he's in reasonably bad shape. So those are reasonable hands to pot control with. And it's not necessarily that you're pot controlling. It's more so that you don't think you can go for 3 streets of value. So I like to call this with a King 2, middle pair, no kicker. And I think this is an okay play. The initial player under the gun is going to fold a ton of the time, which he does do. So it turns to 4 of hearts. Ace, king, 6, 4. 2 spades, 2 hearts. I have no flush draw. I'm, of course, going to check to my opponent, the loose aggressive guy, and he fires out again. This time, again, roughly half pot, 3,350. Slightly less than half pot. At this point, I don't think I can ever justify folding. Given there are numerous draws my opponent could have, notice he could have any spade draw. He could have any now turned straight draw or flush draw, given he may bet the flop with something like 8-7 offsuit and then continue betting. And you may ask, would he call a preflop raise with 8-7 offsuit? Maybe. These kids do crazy stuff. He could certainly have hands like 8-7 suited and take a stab at the flop. I beat all of the bluffs. That's what this amounts to right now. And given that I have a read that this guy is a loose, aggressive kid, I think I probably need to call. And I'm looking to call down on most rivers, which may seem a little bit optimistic. But you have to ask yourself, if my opponent had a flush draw, would he go... Well, let's assume the opponent has ace jack, right? And we get a river that completes a flush. Would he ever go bet with that? And the answer to that's no. So when he bets, that really polarizes him to a good made hand or nothing, most likely. Of course, some of the good loose aggressive kids recognize they can value bet a hand like ace jack, and then my call with middle pair becomes significantly more speculative. If the river is a spade completing the obvious draw, then my opponent is going to view that as a scary card and likely continue bluffing with all of his air. So any way you look at it, my opponent should have a lot of bluffs in his range if he bets the river. If it goes check, I actually expect to lose a decent amount of the time. But if I check and my opponent bets, I am probably looking to call, given I have this read on him that he actually is a loose aggressive kid. So the river is a 2 of spades. So that gives me 2 pair, but the obvious spade draw comes in. And like I said, before this river came, I'm really not trying to fold to very many river bets. Perhaps the only rivers I would conceivably fold would be a queen, jack, or 10 of spades. Those rivers complete the gut shots, which I do think my opponent could have. And they also give him some showdown value with a hand like jack 10. He may decide to check behind those, which maybe is a little bit of an optimistic thought on my part, but a lot of people will river a middle pair and decide, well, I guess I can check this. So I'm definitely checking the 2 of spades. I want to give my opponent every opportunity to bluff. You definitely don't want to lead in this spot because your opponent's going to play well, even if he is crazy. So I check, and he bet 8,400, which again is roughly half pot. I actually like the sizing for my opponent. It may look like he's trying to price me in, but in reality, it looks a lot like he's value betting. And that's really what it amounts to, is it looks a lot like he is value betting. And if he's value betting, obviously my 2 pair is no good. But like I said, I give my opponent enough credit to be capable of betting the size with more than only the nuts or only a value hand. So I think I have to look him up. And that is what I do. So I do call, and he shows jack of spades, 9 of diamonds. So on the flop, he had a backdoor flush draw and backdoor straight draw. So not very much. And I really don't hate his play. I think once he bets the flop, he's not necessarily priced into betting the turn, but he probably should. And then when the river significantly changes the board and my hand looks a lot like a bluff catcher, he should probably continue bluffing. So pretty unfortunate spot for my opponent, given that he bet the flop. I think he should definitely fold jack 9 offsuit from the button facing an under the gun raise, but you do see a lot of plays like this from loose aggressive guys. They see flops and try to outplay people. That is what they do. So thank you very much for watching this week. Be sure to check out Jonathan Little on live No Limit Cash Games, The Practice, Volume 2. You can get information for that at jonathanlittlepoker.com/cash2. If you enjoy this podcast, I guarantee you will enjoy this book. So check it out, and please let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions or comments, please let me know. I am more than happy to do anything I can to make this podcast the best it can be. Thank you very much for watching or listening, and I'll be back next week.